My father abandoned me, so I stole his wife. My name is Ethan. To the world, I am the architect of my own destiny. I run a venture capital firm that smells opportunities from miles away. I live in a penthouse where the city bows at my feet, and my name opens doors that are sealed to others. I have spent the last decade building an empire on the void a man left behind. But every night, when the noise of the markets fades, the silence has a shape and a weight. It is the shape of my father's back as he walked away forever. He taught me that success was the only measure of a man, a brutal lesson I learned in the ruin he left us in. Now, I am going to use that same measure to deconstruct his world, piece by piece. Richard, my father, was a man with a special talent for wrapping selfishness in the language of self-help. When I was 16, with my mother facing her first diagnosis, he decided his personal happiness was a more urgent project. A man has to be true to himself. Ethan, he told me that afternoon, standing next to his designer suitcases, avoiding my gaze. It was not an apology, it was a justification. He left us with a pile of debt and a mortgage on the verge of default. The sharpest memory I have from that time is not sadness, but cold. The cold of the house when the heat was cut off, the cold on my mother's face when she had to sell her grandmother's necklace to pay for her medicine. I gave up my scholarship to a prestigious university and started working in a warehouse at night and a coffee shop on weekends. I became a man, not by choice, but because the man who was supposed to be one had left to be happy. While we counted every penny, Richard flourished. He reinvented himself on the West Coast as a real estate magnate, a Midas of brick and mortar, and he married Isabella years later. When my own success became undeniable and my name appeared in financial magazines, he decided it was time to reclaim his lost investment, me. He contacted me, not with remorse, but with pride, as if my success were a delayed reflection of his own greatness. He wanted to add me as the final trophy to his collection. He invited me to dinner at his mansion, a mausoleum of glass and marble that screamed wealth, but whispered loneliness. That night, I arrived armored by resentment, but I encountered something that disarmed my defenses. Isabella, I expected a superficial woman, but I found a person of deep intelligence and melancholy, trapped in a gilded cage. During dinner, Richard treated me with paternalistic condescension. "I see you got my instinct for business," he commented, patting me on the back. "In the end, blood is blood." Then, he proceeded to treat Isabella like his most exquisite ornament. At one point, while Richard was barking orders over the phone, Isabella and I were left alone in front of a huge abstract painting. "He thinks it's an investment," she told me in a low voice, without looking at me. "But it's actually about loss, about how the strongest lines can break." In that sentence, I heard the echo of my own story. My plan for revenge, until then focused on his finances, took a 180-degree turn. Attacking his money would be an insult. Attacking his legacy, his symbol of a perfect life, that would be poetry. What we had did not start as a romance, but as a conspiracy of lonely souls. Our secret meetings were our only free territory. We talked for hours in forgotten corners of art galleries, under the pretext that I, as a collector, was seeking her expert opinion. She told me about her life, about the suffocating loneliness of being loved like an object. I, for the first time in years, spoke of the 16-year-old boy who had to freeze his dreams just to survive. I fell in love, deeply and irrevocably. The revenge plan had turned into a salvation project for both of us, and that made it infinitely more real and dangerous. His 50th birthday party was the stage. The mansion was overflowing with powerful people laughing at his jokes and admiring his wealth. At the climax of the evening, Richard raised his glass. "I have built skyscrapers," he proclaimed, his voice resonating with arrogance. "But my greatest achievement, The true jewel in my crown is the woman by my side. To my beautiful Isabella, applause filled the room. Isabella, beside him, looked like a perfect statue. Then, she moved. She took the microphone from a surprised Richard's hand. The silence became thick, heavy. "You toast me as if I were yours, Richard," she said, her voice calm but sharp as a diamond. "But a soul cannot be owned, it must be earned, and mine has already found its place." Richard stared at her, his frozen smile turning into a grimace of disbelief and fury. "What are you talking about? Where the hell could you possibly go?" he hissed, his perfect host mask shattered. The answer was not a word. It was an act. I stepped forward, out of the shadows of the crowd. The murmurs stopped. I did not spare a glance from my father. My eyes were fixed on the only person who mattered. I held out my hand. Isabella took it, her fingers intertwining with mine in a silent but thunderous declaration. Together, we turned and walked towards the door, leaving behind a completely broken man at the epicenter of his own ruined party. The public humiliation was just the first course. What followed was the slow, methodical dismantling of his identity. He lost a multi-million-dollar deal because his partners no longer trusted the judgment of a man who had suffered such a public betrayal. But his real torment was seeing us. Isabella and I did not hide. We lived. Our happiness became our declaration of war. We traveled, founded a successful consulting firm together, and became the powerful, united couple he always pretended to be. The easy excuse that she was just after the money became a bad joke coming from Richard's mouth, leaving one millionaire for another. It was obvious to everyone that Isabella had not traded one bank account for another, but a golden cage for a real life. Richard had to face a much more bitter truth. His money had not been enough to keep her, and my money made it impossible to paint Isabella as a simple gold digger. I left him with no villains to blame, only the reflection of his own failure. Last night, I saw Richard's profile on my phone. He had shared an article about a new donation our foundation made to a children's hospital. There was no text, just the link. A silent post in the middle of the night. I imagine him like that, alone in that immense, empty mansion, compulsively scrolling, a digital ghost obsessed with the life we stole from him. I forced him to be an eternal witness to how the legacy he threw away not only survived, but built an infinitely brighter world, a world he will never, ever be a part of.